Hey there, Squirrel Army. Today we're discussing whether Solemn Simulacrum is still good enough to play in EDH. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing and turning on the notifications. Now, of course, Solemn Simulacrum will be good enough to play in some parts of EDH. There's no doubt about that. The fact that there's going to be some decks and some people that will still play it and still really like the card. It's more the fact of, is it actually that good or good enough anymore for some of the more up-ticked decks that we have been seeing over the last few years. And I'm not talking about CDH. I'm more talking about the more up-tuned decks that we're sort of seeing that are between what we would call upgraded precons and the lower levels of CEDH, because that's a sort of relatively newer sort of area of EDH that's sort of really started to develop in the last few years. Decks that are super strong but super fair for the most part in terms of, for the most part of what they're doing. They still have a lot of strength in them, but they're not comboing off very early on. They're not tutoring a whole lot. Some still rely on combat damage and Voltron wins to get the job done. Some are using all kinds of different strategies. Now, there were some more mediumly higher power decks, but really, you haven't really had that many decks that are out there that are in this power band before, I don't really think. And I think that power band has become the most played power band. Now, I'm not 100% on that, but again, I think that has become the new norm for most people. Most people, get into playing EDH. They buy a precon or whatever, or at least a precon powered level deck, and go, well, I want to add $100 to this, or add $50 to this, and then see where I'm at, because that's kind of where I think this deck will be fairly good. And then when you actually go, okay, cool, well, I want to build a decent deck or a fairly strong deck, so that I can play against some of my friends that are playing some more powerful decks, or I just want something a bit more powerful. I don't think that this commander or this build can get there. Plus, I kind of want to keep this commander at this level or whatnot. So it's fine where it's at, but I want something just a bit stronger, not CDH levels again, but certainly much more powerful than, an upgraded precon or whatnot. So again, yes, that's usually where I'm talking about it for the most part, and there I don't think it does. There are maybe a few decks that you could argue that it might go in, like Osgear or whatnot. There are some other decks that are out there, but you've really got to be very specific. Maybe Breya, but even then, it's a sort of a stretch for Breya. I think Breya can be built a lot more powerfully than what Solem can kind of add to a deck like that. Whereas with Osgear, you're in two colors, I think, and you've got less options. But even now, you're getting more and more options. And it's just like, well, yeah, sure, Solem can get you a land and get you a card, but for the most part, you would rather just get two lands or whatever or whatnot, or two cards or whatnot, or again, have your mana sooner on in the game. Yeah, sure, it's a blocker, and sure, it can in theory attack as well, but a 2/2 isn't very relevant on the battlefield for the most part, unless it's got super duper good evasion, and I don't see you giving very good evasion to a random 2/2. For the most part, you could give your evasion to, a 5/6 or a 6/6 or something, that doesn't have evasion. That would be a lot better. You're doing a lot more damage, a lot more effect. Again, yeah, you can say again that it's a good-ish blocker because, hey, it dies, a draw card, some extra value out of it. In the right deck, again, I can recur it, get some more value out of it, so on and so forth. But there's other cards that do more and that you could get more out of for a cheaper cost. So it's hard sell for a lot of people that are playing the much more aggressively powered decks. Certainly in CDH, it's got no chance. But like I never talk about that because it's never that interesting to talk about because there's very few things that have a real chance in even fringe CDH and whatnot. So, and talking about this is like talking about a card that is a, format or old school format staple, like I think if you're not, like once upon a time, if you weren't in green, it was probably one of your very few like land ramp options, if not your only land ramp option. But it's a good thing that they have been powering it out to a degree because I've never been wowed by Solemn Simulacrum. And I've just always felt like this card is a card that needs to sort of fall by the wayside almost for a lot of decks because it should be a card that is just included in precons or lower level decks and then taken out once you are going to upgrade it above anything beyond a precon, because it's just one of those cards that's been probably surpassed by a lot of cards, certainly in the last few years and whatnot. Yes, sure, some of those cards can be more expensive or they don't actually let you play lands directly onto the battlefield, some of them that are a little bit less cost and whatnot, but for the most part, there's just better options because at least you are going to hit your land drops, or at least if you are getting, artifacts, you're getting the mana producing artifacts that you do need to keep up with the mana that you do need and whatnot. So you are effectively making your land drops by making those artifact drops and whatnot to keep your mana going and whatnot. So that really helps. Plus, again, they've sort of put out a fair few really good 2-mana rocks in the last couple of years, whatnot, like Liquid Metal Talk and a couple others. And they've also reprinted quite a few of the signets and talismans and whatnot. The printing of the other half of the cycle of the talismans was also a very crucial sort of step. And they've also, printed or reprinted Into the Ground, Arcane Signet, and Felwar Stone, and some of the other more notable 2-mana rocks that are really worth playing. So that has shifted a lot of play to pushing those 2-mana rocks, and you just don't need something like Solemn Simulacrum. A lot of people would take it as their perhaps 9th or 10th ramp spell, perhaps before, or whatever, or they might have taken it as their first, but it was really like the 10th one that made up, the 10 slots. It was one of the last cards, and it was the most expensive cards in terms of mana value and cost and whatnot, for the most part. And anything that I think like doubles mana or whatnot, those sorts of effects, I don't really count in the same vein or in the same effect and whatnot. But anyway, again, it's tough because I was listening to MTG Goldfish a long time ago. I think this is 6 or 7 months ago now, where they were discussing Solemn Simulacrum, and Richard was making a really good point about how can you not play this card if you can't play this card that's fairly good in terms of Solemn Simulacrum. Then you might as well just say, well, you can't play any card. And I do agree with that in that fashion. It is one of those issues where you start saying, well, power creep is just so ridiculous and so crazy sometimes that some of these cards don't get to see the limelight and whatnot anymore to that extent. And it feels like you have to be playing all of this stuff. It feels like everyone's being pushed more and more and more to higher and higher power level, which means everyone else is being pushed more and more to, getting more and more competitive, which I don't always agree with as well. But when you are actually looking at cards, you've always got to look at them, to that extent objectively as well. You can't just have a soft spot in your heart for cards to a degree sometimes, even though you might want to. I have a soft spot for many cards, and I do play at the power level that I do play at, but it's still a fairly strong power level for the most part. And I actually saw one of their videos, and fairly recently, I think it was, that they said Avenger of Zendikar was too powerful for their playgroup, and I was like, what? It was like, what the heck? And here you guys are playing all these dumb, silly combos and things like this and whatnot. But yes, certainly they do play a lot more uh, sort of casually powerful games, certainly. But I would think that Avenger of Zendikar is right on the power level of their decks. But nonetheless, um, that's quite a weird call to make. And again, that's quite a call to make to say that Solemn Simulacrum isn't good enough and that you should just not play anything or you can't play anything because of it. I don't think that that's actually a factual statement, or those two statements don't actually equate to one another or go together. You can think that Solemn Simulacrum isn't quite good enough for a certain power level or a certain bandwidth of decks, um, as it used to be, because there have been so many more options now opened up to a lot of these other decks and a lot of these other colors. Now, again, there are some commanders and some decks that might still want it somewhere, maybe, but it might be your 101st or 104th card or something, because you've got so many other options now, and we're going to continue to get so many more different options as we go into the future, and that is also a good thing to a degree, because more options means that there'll be less of that stagnation of decks where you go, oh wow, well, your deck is exactly the same as Steve's deck and is exactly the same as 40,000 or whatever other decks that are basically built the same way, because, well, there's only so many cards in existence, and of course you're playing this card or whatnot because, well, it's pretty much your only option, or whatnot, for the most part, to have a decent build path in that deck and in that strategy and in those colors and whatnot. So, again, but anyway, like, getting back to Solemn, and we'll wrap up here quickly soon, is that it's so tough to evaluate some of these things. And if, again, we were talking about precons or underneath precons, absolutely it's fine. And certainly it's not terrible to put in or keep in your decks at all, ever, to that extent, when you're not in green or whatever. But at a certain point, it's like, well, what's the worst card in my deck if I ever want to change it? And you know what? I've got 10 or 12 maybe ramp spells in my deck already. So do I really need this Solemn Simulacrum? Probably not. And I would do better off to have more card draw or more card advantage or something else in my deck. So it makes having that slot being taken up by that Solemn Simulacrum be like, well, I don't really need this card, and it's just a 4-mana card that doesn't do enough for me at this point or at this power level. So you've got to assess where you're at and where you want to be. You have to say, okay, this is where I want to be at. I want to be at the level where Solemn Simulacrum is relevant in my deck, enough to run it. Or I don't care and I just want my deck to be decently good, not busted, but decently good. Or I want my deck to be completely not so busted, or I just want my deck to function, and I want to have fun with my friends, and I'm just playing old cards that I happen to like, or I happen to have and haven't updated my decks in 5 years, or whatever it is. Or we're just playing kitchen table random Magic stuff. Again, know where you're at, know what you want, and know, don't let anyone dictate things to you. Don't let me dictate things to you. But I'm just having this conversation about it. That's all. I'm just saying, if you're looking at those decks and then that power band and where I play and whatnot and that sort of thing for the most part, and if you are upgrading a precon or are upgrading, precon power leveled deck, taking that solem out when you've already got, all your signets and all your talismans and Felwar stones and all your 2 mana ramp when you're not in green, etc., all your artifact ramp. Even a card that I think sometimes is a bit overlooked is the 4 mana Sword of the Animist. Even, it's not legit 4 mana, it's 2 mana to play and then 2 mana to equip, so it is 4 mana all up. And then you get, when you attack with a creature, you get a land. But you can do that throughout the game, and that's really useful, especially when you're in, like, Ishin Two Heavens is 1, get double attack triggers, and it is an attack triggers, you get 2 lands, so double ramping is pretty good. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit wonky sometimes, but it's so effective, and if it sticks around for a few turns, you can get a heck of a lot of value out of it, which is really useful. Whereas Solemn Simulacrum, yeah, sure, it comes in and does what you want straight away, which is good, and if it gets gotten rid of, it replaces itself as well, which is also a good effect. But hey, you also want cards that generate value every single turn on the battlefield when you're at that sort of power level. Not just, oh, it's done and now it's not doing anything else and it won't be relevant until it dies or until whatever point of the game later on. Like, that's not a good strategy. Do you want your cards to be doing something every single turn, so, or at least once per turn, at minimum, if not 3 or 4, times per turn, um, so that you can keep generating that insane value that you need to keep up with decks in that sort of power level. Because that's kind of the level that a lot of those decks are at. You really need to be able to keep up with them. And if you don't, you get outraced and again, not winning's not everything, as I said once before, but having that back and forth, having that experience of, yeah, I might be able to win, makes the game way more interesting and way more fun. And it also makes it more fun for the other opponents because it's like, oh, I gotta watch Steve. He might get there. He might get there. It's not like, oh, you've got Solemn Simulacrum. Well, I don't need to worry about that because it's not going to do anything for the next 2 or 3 turns or whatever. Or it might do something, when it dies and then that's it. Or you might bring it back, but that, whatever. I don't need to worry about that. I need to worry about the fact that, the Cranko player over there is probably going to make 40 goblins next turn. And, that's something I actually need to worry about. Or they might just play Impact Tremors and then, well, that's probably game or whatever. Things like that or whatnot. So, yeah, it does depend a lot on some things and whatnot. Certainly, because again, you look at it in that context, and certainly you would be like, wow, cool. I faced up against Cranko. I finally got to 4 mana. Well, they had 4 mana before me. They had up with Cranko, and they probably just won. So that's what I mean. Even if they literally didn't win, things like that happen a lot where it's like, well, they didn't legit win, but basically they did win, and, well, I've got a Solemn here, and I've got 5 mana now, and okay, what am I going to do from here? And if I don't have a board wipe, and even if I have a board wipe, maybe that doesn't answer it, maybe I'm still dead, because if all the goblins or whatever it is die, I still probably take enough ping damage from something, or whatever it is, and I'm still probably dead. So it's just like, well, yep, you're in that stuck rock between a hard place and whatnot. So so that's where you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it, well, is this good enough for me by the time I'm going to play it, even especially if I play it on curve, like if you play it like turn 3, still not that amazing. I don't think you can play it before turn, 3 or 2 or 3. I wouldn't think you would be able to, but there might be a way. But certainly, like, it's very unlikely. But anyway, guys, that is that for the most part. Anyway, so it's a tough call always to try to do these things, but I enjoy doing them and I enjoy having this discussion, and that's what it's all about. It's all about trying to weigh up the pros and cons of how much value you're giving up by playing some of these cards sometimes, because that is the game of Magic the Gathering and whatnot, and that's why we enjoy it, because we can, debate things, and I love when people do debate things, and if you do want to debate some of these things with me, you can comment down below what you think. Am I so completely wrong? I try to be as even-handed as I can be. I need to try to make that perspective of, okay, yes, it can be really good in some decks if you're lower powered, but don't get your hopes too high up if you're looking for anything else beyond that. And it can be a role filler or whatever, your 101st card or whatever, or it could be your pet card. Again, there's nothing wrong with running pet cards at all and things like that. But again, for the most part, I wouldn't take it on because it's just one of those cards that you probably don't need and you can probably replace with something else that'll probably give you a lot more bang for your buck for the most part. Yes, some of those other cards are, a little bit more expensive for the most part, but I really think that they're worth the extra cash involved to get something a little bit more consistent and a little bit more early on, because that's what you want to do. You don't want to wait till turn 4 or whatever it is to finally get your 5th land or whatever, your 5th mana source. You already want to have that well on the way. You already want to have 4 or 5 mana by turn 4. So, or even more. So, yeah. But anyway, as I said, you can let me know your thoughts, write them down there in those comments, and if I don't see you in those comments, I'll see you in the next one.